Hello and welcome everyone to our first edition of our Power BI Digest Monthly. We, your hosts, Manuel Quintana,
and my name's Devin Knight.
Going to be exploring April's updates for Power BI Desktop. Specifically, not everything.
Right.
We've decided to kind of hone in on those kind of really high impact items that we know you're going to be excited and want to kind of introduce right into your development right away.
Yeah.
We have quite a slew. Anything that we want to kind of pick up off the top?
Yeah, so I think what we're going to start off with is some DAX.
Which is kind of rare, right?
Yeah.
I love that expression language. Mm-hmm. And it's a rare thing to see a new introduction, a new function in there, and they did. They added a new one.
Yeah, you don't see it updated very frequently, but when you do, it's pretty impactful. This one's pretty minor.
Yeah.
Something you can certainly do without this new function, but I think the way I want to introduce this one is by showing a problem or starting with a problem, and then let's kind of walk you through a solution. So let's go ahead and go to a quick little demo here. All right, so we're looking at a data model I already have created. We're looking at Medicare spending data, basically, that we have here. And what I'd like to do is I want to be able to map out where my hospitals are by county and really look at the Medicare spending that we have by county. And if I were to do something like that, I, of course, do have a county name column in here. And if I select that county name, you'll see that it automatically plots it out on a map that's generally based on the fact that it has county in the name of the field.
And really, as you're kind of setting this up, it's kind of starting to feel familiar, right? These are some of the... So really, this is something that's going to assist us in something we've already done. Normally, with this, it's because of, and I know there's like the magical word that is that ambiguity.
Right. So you're noting the problem here. The problem here is these are U.S. Medicare spending data, but I have all sorts of counties that are showing up in the UK. I have some showing up in France, all over the place. And the reason for that is, like you said, the ambiguity, where we have a county name that can exist in multiple places. And so what we need to do is we need to clear it up a little bit. We need to make it more specific, where maybe we say it's the county name plus the state to make it a little bit more clear.
Kind of refine that. Now, normally, historically, like the way I would go about this is just kind of use create a calculated column.
Yeah.
And I would use DAX and probably just use, you have the option of the concatenate function or the ampersand operator.
Yeah.
So this is going to be something to maybe make that a little bit cleaner? Or?
Yeah, you could certainly still do it that way if you prefer, but this new method we're going to look at is using a function called combine values. And the idea of this is to be able to basically have a comma-separated list of values that you can combine together from columns that you specify.
Gotcha.
And I say comma, it can actually really be any delimiter you want. So how some people might use this is if they're joining two tables together, they're creating two relationships together in their data model, and those relationships need to be based off of more than one column, then they might combine these two columns, combine values, and then have some kind of delimiter like a pipe or something like that to separate them.
And what's nice is from the way, not just two columns, so I already like that a little more than the concatenate function.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to nest a couple if you wanted 3, 4, 5.
Right.
Here, like you said, a list, you just kind of comma separate and you go. That's kind of nice.
Let's take a look at how it looks, how it works, and then we'll show you how this actually fixes our map that we have here. So I'm going to create a new calculated column. I'm going to right-click on the hospitals table and do new column. And I'm going to zoom in on this so you guys can see it a little better. We're going to name this column County State. And inside of this column, we're going to have use the combine values function. So this is the new one here. And it starts off with a delimiter. So how do you want to separate the values that you have?
Gotcha.
You could put an empty space there if you wanted to, but in our case here, I'm going to do a comma and a space because we're going to do county, comma, state.
Gotcha.
And so the first column we're going to return back is from the hospitals table. We're going to return back the county name. And then the second column that we want to intermingle in with that is going to be the state. So I can do hospitals and bring in the state here. Now you could also bring in hard code text in here. So say, for example, I also wanted to put in a third expression to pass in. I could have a hard-coded United States plugged in there.
Really kind of refine that.
Yeah, exactly. And then hit enter on that, and let me unzoom here. And if we take a look at what this looks like, so I can either bring it into our map, I can swap it out in my map, or I can just put it into a table or something like that, so we can take a look at what it looks like here. If you take a look at it, you can get an idea of what those values are going to look like. So you see the county, comma, state, comma, country, or United States. We know they're all in the United States in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap out that value inside of the location field here. So I'll swap that out, bring in the county name. I can just got rid of it there altogether, but we'll bring it back into a map again. Select that, and then we should see these, at least initially, we're going to have a little bit of an issue where they're still kind of being plotted all over the place. But that's actually because of something else, right?
Combine it with something that we already know that we have at our fingertips.
Right. So the issue here that we're having in this case is that, yes, it looks like some of these are still plotting out in Europe, but that's because we need to change the data category. So you might have done this if you've worked with maps before. In this case, we're going to select the county-state column that we just created, go up to the modeling ribbon, and underneath modeling, you'll find a option here called data category, which is set to uncategorized right now. And we're going to switch that to a place. You'll see other things in here like county. That would be useful if we didn't have other things that are appended to it. But in this case, if we select this and make it a place, we should see our map, there we go, work appropriately now.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
We're looking pretty good here. So that's our first one. So let's talk about the next thing we're going to look at.
Absolutely. Well, right now we have a beautiful looking map. We know everyone really does enjoy the native visuals that we have available to us. Quite a lot of range, right?
Right.
But another fantastic feature is that we have the capability of going into the marketplace and getting custom visuals.
Yeah.
I do it, you do it, everybody here. We all love the custom visuals. One thing that kind of is an ache point is I use this custom visual. I kind of have to keep it in a folder, some sort of location.
Right.
If there's something that we use here in Pragmatic Works collectively, we put it somewhere and then I would reach for it and get to it. The only other option is really put it into a template file. It'd be nice to have some sort of a bucket, an area where we can put these approved visuals easy and accessible for the entire organization.
Yeah, yeah. And so this feature came out in preview a few recently, fairly recently. And it's called Organizational Custom Visuals that we're going to show. So this is just going general availability now.
Yeah.
So we want to kind of highlight it in this video. So in case you hadn't seen it when it was in preview, that you now have it available as a regular feature for yourself. So.
And is the range for this? Because I believe, we have the readily available ones there in that marketplace. Does it extend also if we're making our own custom visuals?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so you can place inside of this organizational bucket, basically, either ones that are from the marketplace that you want to approve that others should be using, or what you could do is you can actually build your own custom visuals and then place them inside there where you don't have to make them public to everyone in the world, but you can make them available within your organization.
Perfect.
All right, so let's take a look at how this one works too. All right, so in this case, the place that you'll find where these visuals are available is going to be underneath the home ribbon, the same place you find custom visuals now from the marketplace. We're going to eventually come back to this section because this is where we're going to find the visuals that we've made available for our whole organization. But before we do that, we need to first upload a visual to the organizational custom visual gallery, basically. And so I have that already open here. Let me make sure I bring this over to the right screen here. There we go. This is the Power BI admin portal. So this is part of the Power BI service that I've logged into. And you need to make sure you have access to the admin portal, the Power BI admin portal to get this far. You'll find that underneath the settings button here. If you go underneath settings, you'll see the admin portal that will launch, and that'll take you to where I'm at. Now, before you can use organizational custom visuals, you need to turn them on. So the tenant admin, the Power BI admin needs to turn them on. And they can find that by going down to the tenant settings here, scrolling down a little bit, bring it down, there we go, and selecting the custom visual section here where you can enable them. Now, when you enable this, this gives you the ability to start uploading visuals to this organizational visual section here. So this is turned off by default. You'll enable it, hit apply, and then come over to organizational visuals or organization visuals where you can start to upload ones. And so we've uploaded one a while ago. And we're going to just walk you through the steps to upload another new one. Pretty simple. You just select that you want to add a custom visual here. Pops open on the right-hand side. You go find the visual that you want to upload. So I have one here, the chiclet slicer. And then you can give it a name. And then you're going to upload an image, which I happen to have the one that's on the gallery here. And then it's a pretty good idea to give it a description because your users will see this. So you could say, this is an approved visual by corporate. Okay, hit OK or add on that. That'll add that visual here to my organization gallery and visuals here. And now we can go work our way back over to the Power BI desktop. And if we go back over to the Power BI desktop, we'll now select the marketplace. Now, I will point out, even before we click on this, that oftentimes it takes a little bit of time for it to refresh and put that visual into the gallery. In fact, you might need to save, close, and reopen the Power BI desktop for it to show up.
Okay.
So we might only see one when we look at this. If I were to close and reopen, we would see the other one. But if I select from Marketplace here, this will launch open to the public marketplace. But if I select my organization, you'll see actually both of them are showing up here. This is one from earlier because you'll notice the description is slightly different. So I can select whichever one I want. These are ones that are approved by corporate, as the description reads here. And I can select add and bring that now into my visualization window over here in my visualization pane. And then very simply, I can select that. This is just any old visual now at this point. You can do whatever you want with it. Say, for example, I want to filter based on the state. I can now drag in the state. Oh, let's make sure I have the visual selected. Drop that in there, and I can type in now the state I want to abbreviate.
Awesome.
Seems to work just fine.
Perfect. Perfect.
Cool. All right, so that's the organizational visuals.
Definitely going to be something to help out. Just keep everything a little more clean, concise, easy to access.
Yeah,
Make things a little bit nicer. Well, actually, it just so happens that the very visual that you brought in, right, that visual filter that you added, that custom text slicer, we have the original slicer, right? An oldie but a goodie, as they would say.
Yeah.
Something that they say, what, old dogs don't learn new tricks? Well, our slicer that's been there and so effective has
absolutely
learned some new tricks. Now, for those of you who are always on and putting in the preview and seeing what's new and checking those boxes, this is not going to be too much of a surprise, but really this is one that's been in preview for a while, and it's made that jump finally to being generally available.
Yeah, that's right. And so this is the numeric slicer that we're going to look at. So it's you're absolutely right. It's been in preview for a long time. It's finally becoming generally available. So the way this one works is pretty straightforward. We're going to go back to our demo here for a moment. And so basically what happens is if you have a numeric value that you want to filter on, let's say, for example, I go ahead and bring the slicer in. So this is just a regular old slicer. Depending on the data type that I select, it's going to allow me to have different contextual types of filters. And so say, for example, I want to bring in and determine which counties have the highest spend. I can bring in something like my spend value here. And then this gives me a numeric slicer. And of course, you can increase the text and things like that so it's a little easier to read. You can come over here and say, well, let's increase the head. Let's actually make the numeric input a little easier to read like that. And then if we want to, now we have this nice little slider. This is the part that's just finally becoming generally available, where you can use the slider to actually change the range of values that you're looking at, and then it should affect everything in our report based on that selection. So this numeric range slicer, while it was in preview previously, is now generally available for anyone to be able to affect and change your reports when you're using it here. So nice little add-in that's been made available here as well.
And it's really nice. I mean, whenever we're thinking about things, new additions to these visual filters, it's all about how the end user is going to accept this.
Right.
And this works great with these larger metrics, right? We're talking here, if we just look on the screen, 38,505, but that goes to various decimal places out. So it's a really large range of distinct values. Here you have this really smooth, nice feel of just sliding it in. What's my bottom? What's my top? You can create and you can slide that range really anywhere you want on that scale.
Absolutely.
So really nice, effective. Oh, I like that. Like I said, oldie, but now we've got some new stuff inside of it.
Absolutely.
So another addition, which I always found fun. I mean, we always had that ability to hit that shapes option, and they had some predefined shapes. You could import an image when we got the stuff with storytelling. That was kind of fun, where we could have it point to a bookmark.
Right.
They're adding more into this realm.
They are.
This kind of interactivity, this click for an action feel.
Yeah, absolutely. So the new this is a new feature as well that we're going to looking at. It's related to Q&A,
which everybody loves, right? We always that when that was introduced, that just kind of was super popular, and then it was brought to the desktop. But we're going a little bit further with it now.
We are, yes. So let's take a look here. So Q&A, as you know, it's still in preview within the Power BI desktop. It's available in the service. In case you're brand new to Q&A, just real quickly how it works. You can just double click somewhere in the background of your report. And then you can type a question. You can say something like, show me the total hospitals, something like that. And if I type that in, it's going to return back a number that gives me that value returned back. And I can just put this somewhere in my report now and use it for later. So that's the basics of Q&A. But what's been added is a couple things that are really working together. One is this idea of buttons. So you'll see buttons up on the top here. This is new, wasn't here previously. This idea of buttons allows you to actually create several different kinds of almost like images, but they're used as buttons here, where you have buttons for bookmarks, buttons for Q&A, help, and you can make these things tie to really whatever you want. But in particular, I can use and leverage one like this Q&A one. And what we're made available to us here is an option to actually go deeper with the way Q&A works. So we saw Q&A where we can build out visuals on a report. But we can also use Q&A through this new option called Q&A Explorer. And the idea of Q&A Explorer is where you can have a set of pre-suggested questions for your users. And say, for example, I want to give them some guidance because I know you've seen this as well. When people use Q&A, they can get a little lost because it's basically an empty search box they have to figure out. So what we can do is we can give them some predefined questions asked. And what we can do with this button is we can even maybe perhaps add some text to it so that we can actually give them an idea of what to do with this. I can say something like, click here for suggested questions, something like that. And make the text a little larger so it fits in here nicely, and even make the text in bold or something like that if we wanted to. You can certainly suggest make a lot of changes to the formatting as you desire. But as we do that, what we can do is, in using this button that we've just created, you can actually hold, and you'll see when I hover above it, it tells you got to hit Control and click from within inside the Power BI desktop. And if I hit Control and click, it'll actually launch open this new window here for suggested questions. This is the Q&A Explorer. And so what I can use this for is I can start to type and ask questions about my data. So I can say something like, I want to see, we just did the question for total hospitals. I could add that one in here, search, and hit add, and it now has it as a suggested question here.
Okay.
I could type in another one. Let's say I want to ask something like see the spending by state. Let's then sort it by spending. To do that, I now have this nice little report here, or a little visual that I can add, and I now have multiple visuals that show up here.
Very cool.
You can even modify these slightly, so I still have the text from the previous one. I can take out the sort if I wanted to and add another one, and now I kind of have multiple still in here that I can use.
Now I could already, from just looking at this feature, I can already tell you, I mean, we're going to want to put a little bit of work into this, because the more we have in here, it's going to make that navigation for the end user that much more effective, right? Which kind of makes me think I might go a little too far, and I might add a bunch. Is there any way, though, like, what if I want to add multiple of these Q&A buttons and maybe categorize the nature of the questions?
Yeah,
is that something we can do?
That's a great question. Yeah, you can. So what I can do is if I hit save and close here, those suggested questions that we created are basically stored inside this button. And if we were to add another button, another Q&A button here, I'm not going to bother naming this one, but if I were to go ahead and add another one, I'm going to resize it though apparently, and go ahead and click on this, you'll notice this one's empty, it's blank, it's ready to go, whereas if I go back to my first one,
awesome,
it's storing those. So I can actually have multiple buttons where they're storing different questions about the data. So I can put in something like maybe claim type or spending by claim type or something like that. So I can ask different kinds of questions here, and I can label them however I want to be able to return back that information. And I can even say something like, oh, I really prefer this as a column chart, so I can type as column, and it converts that over for me. All right, and then once I hit add, and I can save that.
So what I'm seeing here is fantastic. Anything that I feel like gives direction to our end users is just going to be great. I mean, the idea of Q&A being open-ended, awesome, but now we can also tailor it and give a more guided experience, which sometimes is needed. We have a wide variety of end users who are going to consume this.
Absolutely.
But so you were showing visuals on there, you know, your bar charts, your column charts. We've got a couple of visual, we have our slicer right there, right? That new numeric range slicer. How does that have any play with what we're seeing inside that Q&A?
It does. That's one of the really cool things about this. And by the way, some of you might have noticed that whenever I changed the slicer, the map didn't do anything. That's because I actually never tied a measure to it. So let's make sure I do that real quickly so it looks a little cleaner for what we're trying to do here. But you'll notice as I do this, that as we change the slicer here, yes, it changes the map, but also when we dig into that Q&A Explorer, it also filters down the results to the values that are filtered within the report itself. So you'll notice everything kind of changed based on that.
And it's pretty nice, too. It has kind of, I guess, a little warning indicator on that bottom that tells you, hey, filters are affecting what you're seeing.
Exactly, yeah.
That's pretty nice. I didn't see that before because we weren't filtering anything.
Yeah, exactly. So pretty cool little way to visualize and work with your data. It's a nice little ad that you should definitely take a look at.
Absolutely. Now, there was one more thing, though, and this kind of segues into this next one, the last one we're going to talk about here. What you were typing in that Q&A Explorer was spending.
Right.
But I'm looking at your fields, and I see average spending by hospital, like a very long column.
Yep.
Are you using the feature? The feature we've had for a little bit is synonyms. I assume that's what you're leveraging?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so in this last feature that I want to show you guys is we're going to be showing you, yes, of course, you've had synonyms for a bit, but there's a new enhancement that they've made to it to make it where it's a little bit more scalable, where you could actually have someone else work on synonyms for you, perhaps.
Oh, that'd be great.
So what we're seeing here, you nailed it. You saw inside of my Q&A search that I was typing the word spending, but nowhere in here do I have a column simply called spending that I can reference. So inside of our relationship view, that reason why that's working is because I've actually previously created some synonyms here on the Medicare spending table. You can see there's a synonym down here for spending. There's also one for Medicare spending. Anytime someone once again, information about average spending per episode hospital, which no one's ever going to type that.
No.
They can type in either spending or Medicare spending and still get that column to return back. Now, that's a great thing. You can come in here and create those synonyms. But what if I'm the developer, I don't really know what all the synonyms are that people are going to need? What would be great is if I can actually hand off to someone else a file where they can add the synonyms for me, and then I can just re-import that from them.
Absolutely.
And that's a leading thing there. Yeah, we definitely have that ability now that's been added in through something called Linguistic Schema.
Okay, very neat.
So the way this works is you'll go underneath the modeling ribbon. By the way, this is available even when you're not in the relationship view. So if you go underneath modeling, you'll find it underneath here called Linguistic Schema. And if you hit the down arrow on that, you'll see there's an option here to export a schema, import a schema, and then you can also just learn a little bit about how to work with the linguistic schema. So your first step here is you would export the schema from this model. So I would select export, and by the way, I've already done this, so I'm not going to export it a second time. But I would export this, go save it to a location that I want, and then I would hand that file off, this linguistic schema file, to maybe my business user that knows what people are going to ask. And that way, what they'll do is they'll get a file then that looks like this. I'm just opening it in Notepad++ here. But they'll get a file that looks like this, that has all the column names, the tables that they came from, and then you'll also see in here the words that can be leveraged to return back the text, basically, how to make Q&A work. So you can see here, this is the column that we're working on now, the average spending per episode hospital. They can type in that full name if they wanted to. They can type in spending. That's one of the synonyms I created already. And they can type in Medicare spending.
Oh, awesome.
But now, with this file, someone could also come in here
and add to it.
They could add into it. So I can say, let's say I want to add in something like Manuel is great at Power BI. Obviously, that's not a good example because it's way longer than what we had already.
Yeah, that's a lot of typing.
But this just proves the point. You can type whatever you want in here as a synonym. Maybe someone's going to type that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can save this schema file now and get rid of it or close it. And then I can come back into Power BI and re-import that linguistic schema file that we just made changes to. So it's right here, this one called Medicare Linguistics. If I go ahead and select that, we're now going to have a new synonym that's been created, and you can already see it's right here.
Yep.
And we're going to test it out just to make sure that works. We'll go back over to the report real quick, just double click here, and I can type in something like Manuel is great at Power BI. And just like that, we're returning back our Medicare spending. So very cool little feature that is going to allow you to scale. And I think you're going to see a lot of changes with this over time. Like right now, and I even saw there's going to be some more information in a future blog post on how to leverage this. But this is just the beginning. I think this is something that will probably be enhanced over time. You'll get some more creative ways of working with the linguistics language here. But it's a really cool way to get started. And a good investment, I think, by the Power BI team.
Absolutely. And it kind of actually, I feel like there's a little bit of tie-in here with one of the features we talked about already with the organizational container for visuals.
Yeah.
And then also something that it's still currently in preview, but a great feature is the custom themes.
Yes, yes.
So I think with this and the other two, we're seeing this capability now where you can really set up some nice standardizations across your organization for development.
Yeah.
And as you're saying, we who are creating these will do our best to think, oh, this is a good synonym, but why not get it in the end users, the BAs, those people who are going to do it? Like, no, this is what we search.
Right.
Hand over a file, they pop it in, you say thank you very much.
Yeah. And
now we've got a more complete, robust Power BI report.
I like it.
Yeah, coming all together, it's looking beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you guys saw and felt the excitement for what we're going to have here in this April update. A quick view so they can quickly incorporate this right into whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
And we're going to be coming back to you every month, trying to give you these insights and say, this is really neat. You need to use it. Well, we hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next video.
Thanks a lot.